got to talking, and I could blame Stuart, but he didn't talk. Just got to catching up with Stuart. Hey, happy Mother's Day, Mom! Happy Mother's Day. Okay. The real day is next month, Father's Day. Okay. All right. Let me see. Hey, we got any first timers? Any first timers? Oh, wonderful. Right there. Good deal. Good deal. I hope that when you came in, you had a chance to stop at one of the tabletops and let us get a little bit of information from you. If you didn't, maybe on the way out, you could do that. We're thrilled to have you here. In fact, especially the newcomers. Next couple of slides, Andrew. Next one has to do with, we really want to invite you. This is how we stay in touch, to join us on Facebook, page or group. That's how you can join us, and just go there right now on your phone and click and join us. And then the next slide, in fact, somebody just asked me, Jimmy, how do I access? Most of you keep up with the teachings on Facebook and the listening guides and the PowerPoints are there, but we also post these on YouTube. And if you want to either re-listen, but I cover a lot, as you know, just go to YouTube and Google it, Jimmy Knott Journey Class, and all of the teachings are there. All the teachings are there. Okay, Stuart, you get that down? You got it, buddy? All right. Good job. Good job. All right. Take your listening guide and Bible, and we're in this series on exploring the Psalms, and today is a psalm I've never studied before. Psalm 40. Psalm 40. Next week, and I'll give it to the end, Psalms 42 and 43 really on dealing with the subject of depression. And I'm not a psychologist, not a professional counselor. There are a lot of reasons. We'll talk about that briefly, why we struggle with depression. It's pretty epidemic in our world, and the Christian community is certainly not immune from it. So we're going to look at it next week, what Psalm 42 and 43 can say to us. And then next week we'll do Psalm 46. Psalm 46, great psalm. And then, if my figuring is right, first Sunday in June, we'll start a study in the book of Philippians. In the book of Philippians. Okay, I think it's going to take me about 16 weeks to get through it. 16 weeks. So I want to throw a challenge out to you. And it's a very difficult, but it can be a life-changing challenge. And even up front, before we get there, I'm going to challenge you to start reading the book of Philippians. Okay, and here's the challenge, and I'm telling you it's hard, but it can be life-changing in your Bible study knowledge, and that's this. I want you to read the book of Philippians every day, that means daily, that means once a day, every day, in the same Bible, every day, once a day, that's daily, for a month. Every day, daily, same Bible, 30 days. 30 days. It'll take you about half an hour to do that. Maybe a little less if you're a fast reader, a little more if you're a struggle as a reader. Read it every day in the same Bible for 30 days. Got it? Got it? Hey, Timmy, now you're giving us a lot to read the Bible. Psalm 40, Psalm 46, all of Philippians. Oh, isn't that just terrible? Am I going to apologize for asking you to read the Bible? Don't think so. Don't think so. Especially a lot of other things that we read and watch. Okay? So, hey, it'll be helpful. It'll be helpful. All right, Psalm 40. I'm going to read it. 17 verses. Again, not one of the more Psalms that I was familiar with, but it's been a great study as we look today what to do when life is in the pits. Now, next week is kind of taking this to the next level. When you got a huge hole, okay, and you're in it, it's bad enough. But if you ever stop to think, if you dig out two sides of a hole, you have a rut. Think about that. Oh, you got two sides of it, you got a rut. That's where if you don't get today's message, then you end up where next week's message is. Are you with me? All right. Okay, so let me read it. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the pit of destruction, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. Blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust, who does not turn to the proud, to those who go astray after a lie. You have multiplied, O Lord my God, your wondrous deeds and your thoughts toward us. None can compare with you. I will proclaim and tell of them, yet they are more than can be told. In sacrifice and offering you have not delighted, but you have given me an open ear. Burnt offering and sin offering you have not required. Then I said, behold, I have come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me, I delight to do your will, O my God. Your law is within my heart. I have told the glad news of deliverance in the great congregation. Behold, I have not restrained my lips, as you know, O Lord. I have not hid your deliverance within my heart. I have spoken of your faithfulness and your salvation. I have not concealed your steadfast love and your faithfulness from the great congregation. As for you, O Lord, you will not restrain your mercy from me. Your steadfast love and your faithfulness will ever preserve me. For evils have encompassed me beyond number. My iniquities have overtaken me, and I cannot see. They are more than the hairs of my head. My heart fails me. Be pleased, O Lord, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me. Let those be put to shame and disappointed altogether who seek to snatch away my life. Let those be turned back and brought to dishonor who delight in my hurt. Let those be appalled because of their shame who say to me, aha, aha. But may all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. May those who love your salvation say continually, great is the Lord. As for me, I am poor and needy, but the Lord takes thought for me. You are my help and my deliverer. Do not delay, oh my God. It's a great, great song. Have you ever lost your song? I'm not saying, okay? Have you ever lost, we call maybe the spring in your step? Have you ever lost kind of the gleam and the sparkle in your eye? Have you ever lost the joy in your heart? My guess is we all have. Probably more than once. Okay? And probably will happen again. We find ourselves often what I call the journey of life in the pit. In the pit. Look at these few pictures. There are three, I think there are four of them. That is a pit. Okay? If there's somebody in the bottom of this, I can't see them. It's all dark. But there could be. Look at the next pit. Now there is somebody. Okay? In the pit, despondent, desolate. And the pit's not bad enough. How about getting stuck in the mud? The next one. Just walking through the mud, slowly but surely, stuck in the mud. And then my favorite of the pictures is the next one. Okay, just stuck. And this is what he talks about here. He lifted me up, drew me up out of the pit of destruction, and out of the miry bog set my feet upon the rock. David knew what it was to be in the pit. We find it there often, especially between the time he was anointed as a young man to be king and all the years that Saul and his own son Absalom chased after him. We don't have any background listed here. It just says to the choir master, a song of David. We don't have any real specifics of the backdrop, but like some of the others that we have looked at before, I still think it's Saul's on his mind. I still think perhaps Absalom is on his mind and all the struggles, and he finds himself in the bottom of the pit. And then he looks back on that experience, of which he had many times, and discovers that God had always been faithful. And eventually, in time, on his timetable, not ours, he lifts us out of the pit, puts our feet on solid ground, and gives to us a new song, a new spring in our step. So as we go through, I want to ask and answer, you got it on your outline, really 3 questions about what to do when life is the pit. When life is the pit. First question has to do, what do we do when we find ourselves in the pit? The second question is, when we are in the pit, what does God do? And then the third question is, can my life have an impact if I handle my time in the pit well? Can my life make a difference? So that's kind of where we're going, and the psalm really just unfolds and kind of speaks for itself. So here we go. What should we do? Verse 1. I waited anxiously for the Lord. No, that's what we do. Okay? All right. I waited angrily for the Lord. No. Isn't it interesting that we keep coming back to this same thing for us? And I ask myself, why does David over and over, like 17 times, he tells us to wait? But this is the only time that he puts patience with him. Now I can wait, but usually not patiently. Okay? I tend to wait anxiously. Okay? And not often angrily, but anxiously do wait. Do you think he knows we're in the pit? Do you think God leans over his throne in heaven and looks down and says, oh, Jenny is in the pit. I didn't see that coming. I don't think so. Nor do you. Okay? He knows that we're in the pit. He's fully aware of where we are and how we got there. So he's on top of it. We just have to wait patiently and trust. Again, I'll get to it in a minute. That help is on the way, because near as I can tell, looking at those 2 pits that I put up there, there's really only one direction to look. Up. Up. So wait patiently. Verse 1 again. He inclined to me and heard my cry. I think this is where we struggle. Pride kicks in, and we don't want to cry up to him and to admit that we have a need. It's easier to complain. It's easier to gripe. It's easier to blame someone else, because we don't always end up in the pit because of the choices that we made. Sometimes we end up in the bottom of the pit because of the choices of people that we love made, and we find ourselves at the bottom. Sometimes it's work-related. We didn't have anything to do with it. Sometimes we find ourselves in the pit because it's health-related. Sometimes it's there's so many reasons to fall in the pit. You can sit at the bottom of that stupid pit and all day long analyze, why am I in here? But you know what, for one, I think the most important thing, as soon as you can wait and learn the lessons God wants you to teach, is get your butt up and get out of the pit. I have discovered after many years, this may surprise you, that there are many Christian, genuinely Christian people I know, they love living in the pit. There are some people that just love feeling sorry for themselves and blaming everybody else rather than trying to get out of the pit. So, let me show you something. Turn over to Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6. In Mark chapter 6, this is Mark's account of one of the 2 occasions where Jesus, there's a storm on the Sea of Galilee. On one occasion, you remember, he's with the disciples in a boat, but he is with them. You with me? This is the occasion later when another storm, he's sent there to teaching, and the crowds really wanted to, frankly, make him crowned king, and he said, I'm not going to have any of that kind of kingship. And so he sends them out into the Sea of Galilee, and he goes over to the mountains to pray. And a huge storm, which can happen quickly on the Sea of Galilee, takes place. And the disciples are frightened. Okay, now they had been in a storm before. A few of them were experienced fishermen. But this was obviously pretty horrific. But they had been there with Jesus before, so the only problem is this time Jesus is not there. And to make matters worse, as far as they know, he can't get there. So they're alone. Verse 45, Mark 6. Immediately he made the disciples get into a boat and go before him to the other side. And he orchestrates it. He sends them to Bethsaida while he dismissed the crowd. And after he had taken leave of them, he went up into the hills and mountains to pray. And when evening had come, by 6 p.m., the boat was out on the sea and was alone on the land. And he was along the land. And he saw that they were distressed in rowing, for the wind was against them. And about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them. So they're on the water, 6 p.m., fourth watch of the night, 3 a.m. to 6. So they've been out here wrestling this storm for hours as seasoned fishermen. And he sees him. And about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them in another boat. No. Walking on the water. Catch this statement. He meant to pass them by. I mean, he's just trucking on the water in a storm. He sees these guys wrestling with this horrific storm, and he meant to pass them by. But when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost. I bet they did. And here's what I want you to see. They cried out, for they all saw him and they were terrified. And immediately he spoke to them, "Take heart, it is I. Don't be afraid." Here's my question, tying into the Psalm 40 is, what if they hadn't cried out? What would Jesus have done? He meant to pass them by. I wonder, God, because we refuse to face where we are, what's going on, especially if we were part of the cause. And in our, as it were, our pride or arrogance or rebellion, we refuse to cry out. What are the times in my life, as it were, God passed by? He went on to help somebody else who was willing to admit their need and to cry out. One of life lessons, especially the last 10, 12 years for me that I've learned, is I cry out a lot. You don't hear it, because I'm not talking to you. And one of the important elements of God's willingness to work in our lives is the willingness to be humble and broken before Him. And to realize, even if we cause the situation that we're in, that God's not mad at us. God's not out to get us. He's not turning back. He wants to help. But there's a sense that we have to see our own need and cry out for help. And that's what David did. Go back to Psalm 40. Cries out for help. Don't let him pass by. Look at verses 6 to 8. Verses 6 to 8 have to do with really the sacrificial system. Remember that David, it was a very active system then. David grew up, and Saul was the king that chosen the first king, and he was anointed by Samuel, and he used him. And you may remember in 1 Samuel 15, God told him to destroy the Amalekites, and King, I think, Agag destroyed everyone and everything. And Saul didn't do that. Saul didn't do that. He destroyed almost everyone and almost everything. But he preserved King Agag, and he preserved the best of the spoils. Okay? In 1 Samuel chapter 15. Samuel confronts Saul. Now Saul, the first thing he does is say, I didn't do it, the people did it. They did it. I'm just responding to the people. Chicken. Coward. In verse 19, Samuel asked, why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you swoop on the spoil and do what is evil in the sight of the Lord? And Saul said to Samuel, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone on mission on which the Lord sent me. I have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and I have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took of the spoil, the sheep and oxen, the best of the things devoted to destruction. They took them. Listen, this is for you, God, to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. And Samuel said, now, then I'm going to go back to verse 6 in Psalm 40. Has the Lord a great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. For rebellion, not obeying God's voice, is like the sin of divination, like occult involvement. And stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, He has also rejected you from being king. Now go back to verse 6. In sacrifice and offering you have not delighted, but you have given me an open ear. Burnt offering and sin offering you have not required. You understand what he's saying here? David grew up watching the ritualistic system and seeing and participating in the sacrifices. And this is one of the first instances that we get a glimpse that what God is after, even then through the ritual, was not the ritual, but the relationship. You can sacrifice all that you want to sacrifice. You can participate in all the offerings, and 4 or 5 are mentioned here. But if your heart's not right, it doesn't mean anything. It's no good. It's no good. And this, I think what he's after, what he wants is for us to surrender to him. Maybe in the New Testament, there's Romans 12:1. This is what Paul said, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercy of God, because God has been merciful and gracious to us, to present your lives, your bodies, everything, I mean, not as a dead ritual sacrifice, but as a living sacrifice, surrendered, holy and acceptable to him. This is your reasonable or spiritual worship. It's about the relationship more than anything else. So surrender to him. I thought about the disciples that we read a moment ago, and I thought about what's going on in David's life, and I thought about why does God permit us to fall into the pit? Why does he permit for the disciples those horrific storms to come into their lives and ours? I came to 3 conclusions. One is for correction. Okay, we've made some choices, made some decisions, headed in a direction, headed down a path. It's not pleasing to him. He's trying to get our attention. He's trying to say, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't want to go that way. You want to go that direction. So it's kind of a storm or a pit of correction. A second possibility, and we don't ever know this until we look back, and that is he lets us fall in the pit for protection. There have been so many times that I look back now that I didn't see then. In fact, God and I probably had some pretty tense conversations. I look back and see his hand protecting me for some things. I remember reminded of our daughter-in-law, Lorena. She got into a relationship with a fellow teacher there, and it moved in the direction of engagement and a marriage date. And we were thrilled, for her. We had a couple chances to meet the gentleman, and based on what we do, things look good. And then 1 week before the wedding, she calls us on the Sunday afternoon. Of course, we were planning to fly out, and said, the wedding is off and the relationship is over. And then she divulged that, one, he had told her, when we get married, you will never, ever see them again. Number two, he had hidden from her and she had discovered a life of pornography. Number three, she also discovered that he had been with prostitutes. Looking back, I would say that was the hand of God protecting her. Now, stories are not always that vivid, but there have been just how many times have you and I been protected just on the roadways of Orlando? How about every time we get on the roadways in Orlando? Okay. So the pit, the storms come, correct us, yes, protect us, but I think more often than any other reason is this one, to perfect us or to grow us. Okay? We just are not real teachable when life is good. We just aren't. It has to get tough. Life has to, as it were, throw us in a dungeon, throw us into the stormy seas in order to bring us to the place of brokenness and dependence. So we cry out to Him. A lot of reasons. But when you find yourself in the pit, look at the D, look at next, verse 8. I delight to, well, it says, then I said, behold, I have come. In the scroll of the book, it is written of me. Wouldn't you love to have this written of you? Perhaps by someone else, I'm guessing. I delight to do your will, oh my God. Your law is within my heart. When you're in the pit, when you're on that stormy sea, the last thing we want to do is His will. But the thing that David learned was, not only do I need to continue to obey and do His will, notice he says the attitude in it. Because I have done God's will reluctantly. Okay? I've even done His will digging my heels in. Okay? But David said, here's the attitude, especially when life is tough. Delight to do His will. Delight to do His will. Wow. It's easier to be mad, angry, worrisome, fret, self-pity. That's easier. Delight to do His will. And then next in verses 9 and 10, keep your testimony intact. It's like when we're in the pit, what we don't realize, especially if people know that we're Christian people in a relationship with God, is that our pit has glass walls. People are watching us. Especially unbelieving, cynical people. Neighbors that don't know the Lord, co-workers that don't know the Lord. Even some believers are watching to see, now what will they do? Now how will they respond? When life is not a bowl of cherries, it's just like in the cherry pits. How will they respond? Keeping your testimony intact. Never let the pit weaken your testimony. Never. Let it strengthen your testimony. Notice he says, I have told the glad news of deliverance in the great congregation. Behold, I have not restrained my lips, as you know, Lord. I have told. I have not hidden your deliverance, verse 10, in my heart. I have spoken of your faithfulness and your salvation. I have not concealed your mercy, steadfast love, and your faithfulness from the great congregation. And then last, what do is, we've got to be willing to look at our responsibility in this. Are we in this pit because we have done something? In attitude, action, is there something sinful that needs to be dealt with? And this part of what David struggled with. As for you, O Lord, you will not restrain your mercy from me. Your steadfast love and your faithfulness will ever preserve me. Notice verse 12. Power. For evils have encompassed me beyond number. My iniquities have overtaken me. Overtaken me so much, look, and I cannot see. I am covered in my own sinfulness and blinded by it. My sins are so much that they are more than the hairs of my head. The average head has 144,000 hairs on it. That's nothing for you today. Okay? Some of you in the room, like Andy, are follically challenged. Okay? John, he's not as follically challenged as Andy. Okay? But the whole point is David realizes that, at least in this instance, he played the part of being in the pit because of his own sinfulness. These are all actions. Wait patiently, cry out, surrender, obey, keep his testimony intact. It was sin. These are all things that David did in the pit. Now, what did God do? What did God do? Okay, go back to verse 1. Did he abandon? Did he judge? Did he hide? Notice what it says in verse 1. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me. It's an interesting word, he inclined to me. I'll go back to that in just a minute. He inclined to me and heard my cry. What does God do? He inclines. He listens. That's it. The word incline means to stoop down and bend over like you and I would to our grandkids when they're young, we're kids. That God, when we cry out, God bends over and stoops down. The issue, listen, is not does he hear. Where we struggle is, when is he going to act? When is he going to act? Here's the only thing that I've learned by experience. Probably not when I want him to or how I want him to. And that's been an ongoing conversation for many, many years with me and my God. But looking back, it's amazing how right he's been and how wrong I would have been. Sometimes it takes life experience to teach us that. But it's not just about him hearing and listening. Okay, it's the timing of it. Next it says, he drew me up. He lifted me up. When you're in the pit, what do you need? You need to be lifted up. He throws the rope down. Okay? Y'all remember, many of you will recognize the words of this hymn. Words of this hymn written by James Rowe in 1912. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very deeply stained within. It sounds like what David just described about himself, seeking to rise no more. But the master of the sea heard my despairing cry, from the waters lifted me. I say, that's good stuff, isn't it? It's probably why it's lasted over 100 years. Okay. He lifts us up. And then it says in verse 2, I think your notes may have verse 26, and it should be really 2b. He set my feet upon the rock, making my steps secure. He lands us on a firm foundation. Let me give you a couple of references. Think of these in your notes. Psalm 61:2. From the end of the earth I call to you. Again, think of where they, when my heart is faint, I cry out to you. Lead me to the rock that's higher than I. Look at the next song. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. Let me give you a pit principle. We want God not just to lift us out of the rock and to land us on the solid and secure ground. Sometimes the rock is at the bottom of the pit. may need to think about that, because life experience sometimes says to me that God doesn't at that moment necessarily lift us out of the pit. He joins us in the pit and becomes a solid rock on which we stand. Deliverance is not always out. Sometimes it's through. Even in. Next, verse 3. Not only does he do these things, he leaves us with a new song. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. A new song in my mouth. I asked you earlier, have you ever lost the joy? Have you ever lost the spring in your step? As it were, the gleam in your eye and the song in your heart? And we all have. But we have also experienced His deliverance. And then a new song. There's a joy to that. There's an exhilaration to that comes. And it is a new song. Not new. There are two words for new in the Bible. One is new in time, and one's new in quality. This is new in quality. In other words, why was it new? Why wasn't it the same old song that he had sung before? It was a new song. What was new? Had God changed? Because He does not change. Who changed? David changed. How did David change? His understanding. His trust in his God had moved to a new level, which it never would have moved to, nor would it in our experience, had we not been in the pit. See, there are things in the pit and on the stormy sea you can't learn on land. You can't learn it. You have to learn it when you're at the bottom. And I think sometimes one of the reasons people live much of their life doing that is that for some reason, I pretend to be God, but for some reason, they've not listened and learned and changed. David had changed. He knew more. He knew more about God. He had a greater understanding of how God works. He had a greater confidence in his own journey. And that gave him a new song to sing for everyone to listen to. And that's important because our song, think about it, our song is our story. It's our witness. It's our testimony. And listen, whenever life throws us in the pit, there's always a song playing. It's just what are the words that go with it. That's what people are observing about you today. So what do we do when life is in the pit? Several things. What does God do? But what happens? What results? And I found three here in this song. What happens? Something happens to us. Our testimony, our story, our song is strengthened. Is strengthened. Look at verse 5. Look at verse 5. You have multiplied, O Lord my God, your wondrous deeds, and your thoughts toward us. None can compare with you. I will proclaim and tell them, yet they are more than can be told. Testimony power. Look at verse 9. I have told the glad news of the deliverance of the great congregation. Behold, I have not restrained my lips, as you know. I've constantly been a testimony to you. In verses 9 and 10, he speaks to that. And verse 16. But may all who seek you rejoice and be glad. May those who love your salvation say continually. Say continually. See, we're always playing our song. We're always sharing our story. It's just, what does it say? Look at 1 Peter 3:15. But in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense, not of God, okay? Make a defense of how your journey with God is impacting your life. We ask for the reason for the hope that is in you, but do it with gentleness and respect. I think I've shared this with you before, and I've tried to speak some folks about, as it were, lifestyle witnessing and evangelism, and ask if we remove, if we could, we don't want to, the hope of heaven. I know we don't want to remove that. And we can only testify, we can only sing about the difference Christ makes in our lives here. What would our song be? And would we still be followers of Christ? If there is no heaven, and there is, I know that. If there's no hope, and I know that there is, what would you say to the unbeliever about why they should follow Christ? I'm going to tell you again, if our only answer is, as sweet as it may be, the sweet by and by of heaven, I'm going to tell you something. That lost person sitting across from you, or across the arc of your neighbor, I'm going to make a prediction. They're not buying. They're not buying. So the only real reason you said yes to Jesus was that when you died, you would go to heaven. And that's a great reason. Trust me, that's a great reason. But what difference does he make in our story now? That's what people want to know. Why should I follow Christ? Because sometimes I look at your life and my life, and I can tell you my life better than yours. I don't know that I want to die or Jesus unless we fall in the pit and go through storms. And we know that's all part of our experience with God. So I think strengthening our testimony, they had seen something in David's life. I'm trying to figure out where I saw that, verse 9. They saw something in David's life. Something that they see. Oh, there it is, verse 3. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. It wasn't what they heard or read about David, it's what they saw in David's life. That was the testimony. Next, others trust and see. Many will see, as I just said, they will see. They saw something going on in David's life. Remember when Paul wrote to young Timothy, who was pastoring in Ephesus, which could be a tough church. And Paul kind of closed that letter by saying to them, though you're young, don't let anyone despise your youth. And I pray that all may see your progress in Him. Do people see the progress in your life and my life? I mean, if someone had taken, somebody you work with, a neighbor, anybody, had taken a snapshot, as it were, spiritual snapshot of you and me 12 months ago, and they took another spiritual snapshot today, any change, anything new? And then last results is that God's name is worshipped and praise. I don't have time to get into all of this, but I was struck that in verse 5, verse 10, verse 11, 9 times David refers to your deliverance, your faithfulness, your salvation, your wondrous deeds. Look at verse 5. Your wondrous deeds. That's your goodness and your thoughts toward us. No one can compare. In other words, and notice he says that in verse 5, you have multiplied your goodness. He didn't just add it, it's multiplied in our lives. And he talked about His faithfulness, His steadfast love, twice, His mercy, again, faithfulness, over and over and over again. And then look down in verse, I almost built a lesson around this phrase in verse 16. But may all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. May those who love your salvation say continually, great is the Lord. You ever stop to think about, do you love your salvation? And how do you express that? One of the things that's easy, especially if you walk with Christ for a long time, is develop a sense of entitlement. Rather than, as it were, servant-heartedness in anything. We are the ones that are fortunate to be on God's team. Okay? I'm not sure God necessarily is in heaven saying, oh, listen, I just feel so blessed today that Jimmy's on my team. I don't really think that conversation is happening. Okay? Loving your salvation. So, here's the lesson of the song. Because God has been faithful in the past, they recognize that. To lift us up, to deliver us, to listen to us, we can trust Him to do it again. He may not do it when we think He ought to do it, or how, but He will do it. Okay? Look at the next picture. So this is what we want. God reaching down. God reaching down and pulling us out of it. All right, let's close by let's read together these first three verses. Let's read together these first. Say with me, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the pit of destruction, out of the fiery bottom, and set my feet upon the rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. Amen? Amen. All right. For next week, Psalms 42 and 43, those go together. I'll explain why they go together next week. And then here's three questions for your time of discussion, prayer. Number one, let's look back, which is what David is doing. Can you share a time when God lifted you out of the pit and restored your song? And then, what's your pit today? If you are in one. Maybe you aren't. That's one. Okay? And then third, and I kind of mentioned this moment, how do you evidence that you love your salvation? Okay? Father, thank you again for these Psalms. So rich. Some new, never really studied, and so much there. So far, so many of them been through the life of David, and what a journey he was on. Father, we thank you for your work and deliverance in our lives. Forgive us when we have not waited patiently, but angrily, anxiously for you. Increase our trust. May we learn from the pit experiences and the storm rages that you are trustworthy, and you will deliver us in your time and in your way. In the meantime, we will trust. In Jesus' name we pray.